Have you ever walked into a room and felt a chill, an unease that you can't quite put your finger on? This is the tale of a young man who had such an experience. A recent college graduate, eager to start his new life, he found himself moving into a quaint, yet somewhat aged apartment in the heart of the city. As he navigated through the labyrinth of rooms, he stumbled upon a door. It was old, worn, and strangely locked. This particular door was not mentioned by the realtor, an omission that sparked curiosity and confusion in the young man's mind. It was an anomaly in his new home, a secret waiting to be unraveled. His curiosity piqued, he couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that the locked door stirred within him. It was as if the door was silently whispering tales of forgotten times, unspoken truths, and hidden mysteries. Little did he know, the mystery of the locked door was just the beginning. As night fell, the eerie silence of the apartment began to whisper its secrets. The day's warmth was quickly replaced by a bone-chilling cold that seemed to seep from the very walls. Our protagonist, a man of logic and reason, could not shake off the sense of unease that blanketed the room. He'd been hearing peculiar sounds ever since he'd moved in. Odd, inexplicable noises that seemed to emanate from the room with the locked door. Sometimes, it was a soft, almost mournful wailing, like the wind whistling through a crack. At other times, it was a persistent tapping, like skeletal fingers rapping on a wooden surface. The lights too began to behave strangely. They'd flicker sporadically, casting long, ominous shadows that danced and twisted around the room, and, every so often, they'd plunge the apartment into pitch darkness, only to come back on, as if nothing had happened. But the most unsettling occurrence of all was the cold breeze that seemed to creep from under the locked door. It was an icy wind that made the hairs on his neck stand on end, a chilling draft that seemed to carry with it whispers of long-forgotten tales. He tried to brush these incidents off, attributing them to the old creaky building. The noises were probably just the settling of old pipes. The lights were likely faulty wiring, and the cold breeze, well, it was an old building after all, prone to drafts and leaks. But despite his rational explanations, he couldn't shake off a creeping sense of unease. There was a palpable tension in the air, a feeling of being watched, of not being alone. The room with the locked door seemed to hold an aura of its own, a chilling presence that loomed over the apartment. As he lay in bed, staring into the darkness, he could feel the silence grow heavier, the cold grow colder, the shadows grow darker. His heart pounded in his chest, his breath came in short gasps, his fear was palpable. But as the night grew deeper, so did his sense of dread. Morning light brought courage and a resolve to uncover the truth. With the advent of the new day, our protagonist, emboldened by the sun's rays, decided to confront the mysterious door. The door that had been haunting his dreams and disturbing his nights. A door that held secrets and whispers from a time long past. He took a deep breath, grasping the cold iron handle, the texture rough against his skin. He pushed with all his might, and with a creak that echoed through the silent house, the door gave way. What lay before him was a sight that held him captive, a sight from another era. It was a child's room, a room that time had seemingly forgotten. Antique toys lay scattered across the dusty floor, their paint chipped and faded. Toy soldiers standing in formation, a porcelain doll with a cracked face, a rusted wind-up car, all relics of a bygone era. A thick layer of dust blanketed everything, suggesting that this room hadn't been disturbed in decades. In the corner of the room, our protagonist noticed a small wooden table. On it was an old diary, its leather cover worn and pages yellowed with age. He picked it up, the dust rising in small clouds, making him cough. The diary felt heavy, not just in weight but with the burden of the stories it held within. He opened it, the pages crackling under his touch. The handwriting was neat, the ink faded. The entries spoke of a child's life filled with joy and laughter. But as he continued reading, the tone of the diary changed. The entries became darker, more somber. They told tales of strange occurrences, of shadows that moved on their own, of voices in the night. The final entry was an eerie prediction of a tragic fate, the child's own demise. The diary held tales of a tragic past, one that was about to become his terrifying present. As our protagonist closed the diary, a cold gust of wind blew out the room's only source of light, plunging him into darkness. The haunting was about to begin. As he delved deeper into the diary, the room seemed to come alive. Our protagonist found himself enveloped in a chilling aura. The air grew tense, the temperature dropped, and the toys scattered around the room began to move on their own. The toy soldier marched across the wooden floor, the old doll blinked its glassy eyes, and the teddy bear turned its head. The room, once filled with silence, began echoing with the innocent laughter of a child, a sound that should have brought joy, but instead brought a shiver down his spine. He tried to convince himself that he was imagining things, that it was just the wind, or the old house creaking. But when he saw a ghostly figure, a childlike apparition, it was impossible to dismiss. It was there one moment, gone the next, leaving behind a trail of cold dread. He turned back to the diary with apprehension. It was as if he was peeling back the layers of a forgotten story, a story that was desperate to be heard. He discovered that the room once belonged to a child who had mysteriously disappeared many years ago. The diary entries spoke of the child's playful spirit, his love for his toys, and his infectious laughter, but they also spoke of his sudden disappearance, with no trace left behind. The room was his sanctuary, his world, and it seemed it still was. The words on the pages blurred as the reality of the situation hit him. He felt a chill seep into his bones, a bone-deep cold that no heat could dispel. He was in a room that was alive with the spirit of a child, a room that was haunted by the echoes of laughter and play. His heart pounded in his chest, his throat dry, but he knew he had to continue, to uncover the truth of what happened here. The room was no longer just a room, it was a window into a forgotten past, a past that was reaching out to him, desperate to be remembered, to be acknowledged, to be set free. As he sat there, surrounded by the remnants of a life that was no more, he understood one thing very clearly. He realized he was not alone. Frightened yet determined, he decided to face the unseen entity. As the last vestiges of daylight faded into the obscurity of the final night, our protagonist made the bold decision to spend the night in the room, a room that had become a stage for the supernatural. As the night grew darker, the room seemed to come alive. The air grew heavy, a chilling cold swept over him, and the eerie silence was punctured by the sound of his own heartbeat, pounding like a war drum in his chest. The paranormal activity was intense, more potent than any he had experienced before. It was as if the very fabric of reality was bending, warping under the influence of the unseen entity. Yet he held his ground. He was there for a purpose greater than fear. He spoke into the darkness, his voice echoing off the cold, bare walls of the room. He addressed the spirit, not as an intruder but as a guest, a listener, a friend. He empathized with its tragic past, acknowledging the pain and sorrow that had become the spirit's eternal companions. He spoke of freedom, of the liberation from the shackles of the past, of the possibility of finding peace. He urged the spirit to move on, to step into the light, to embrace the tranquility of the beyond. His words, filled with sincerity and compassion, seemed to resonate within the room, a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. The night wore on, an endless symphony of shadows and whispers, yet he remained unyielding, his resolve stronger than the fear that gnawed at his courage. He continued his discourse, his words a soothing lullaby for the restless spirit, and then, as the first rays of dawn pierced the veil of night, the room fell silent. The cold dissipated, the darkness retreated, and the heavy air seemed to lift. He could feel it, a serene calmness that hadn't been there before. As dawn broke, the room fell silent once again. The sun rose, casting away the shadows of the night, and with it, the echoes of the past. As our protagonist stirred from his slumber, he was greeted by a morning imbued with tranquility. The room, once a backdrop for his nightly horrors, now seemed as ordinary as any other. The air felt lighter, purged of the heavy dread that had once hung like an unwelcome guest. A sense of calm descended upon him, a stark contrast to the chaotic nights he had endured. The room, he realized, held memories, not malevolence. It was a silent narrator of a tale that had been waiting to be told, a tale that had now found its audience. In the end, he chose to let the room be, untouched and unaltered. A tribute to its past, a testament to its story. Because sometimes the most haunted places are not filled with evil, but with stories waiting to be heard.